It's not all stacked up.
Exactly. He tells them straight up, this is what is going to be. And you could say that this is fair, so to speak, on Hashem's side, to tell them that. To say, you guys want a king, and you be ready, be prepared for it, because it's not going to, it's not going to be simple handling with a king. Think of it in a way of democracy, where everyone has a way of influencing, where you have a representative who's elected by the public, who is interested in the support of the public, and therefore there's the relationship here that allows you not to be completely in the hand of the people who are at power. Whereas monarchy, by definition, is that there's an individual or a group of people who are completely at power, and there's nothing no one can do about it, right? I mean, you look half hour to the west and see,
In practice, we've
right?
seen what
Monarchy
happened to
is Xi Jinping.
Shlomo's son. He has to have the people's approval to something. At least he needs the approval of the
I
tribes.
agree. Yes, he does need that approval, but once he's in the position, then the possibilities are endless, so to speak.
Then I was thinking along the way
What?
that David got unlucky in some sense.
Why is
He
that?
had a problem with Shaul and then later his family.
Hmm.
If Yehonatan had survived Shaul, perhaps an arrangement of peace could have been found
Interesting.
earlier than it happened. As it is, Yehonatan died in the battlefield.
Okay, yeah, together with Shaul, they died together. It's
So
interesting you say that, because the Talmud say that this whole dispute between David and Shaul is, if you would say, it's out of place. There was not a real reason for them to fight to begin with. David was not a threat on Shaul. He was supposed to be, the godly plan was to have a Davidic dynasty. David was destined to be the next king, but it didn't have to be the same way. Shaul did not have to respond with such fierce anger and trying to eliminate David in all these instances. He would have let it play, right? It could have been a transition of the kingship. And the Gemara discusses that. And in fact, some of the sages are asking, why is he so threatened by King David, by David before being a king? Why does he feel so much that he has to protect his interest and his own, and he's trying to tell his son, don't listen to David, he's going to just trying to take the kingship out. Why is he being so aggressive? And that's, there's no answer to it. We don't really know. But the fact it happened the same way it happened doesn't mean that this is the only way to do it.
In a couple generations later, we had prophets suggesting, some say did not come to pass, that Yerovam should be a kind of sub-king to Rehoboam.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you remember that story.
Okay.
Yerovam accepted being nominated king, but didn't accept to submit to Rehoboam. That created a split of the kingdom in two.
Yeah, between the northern and the southern.
Yeah.
I say we just put a golden pig in the temple.
Maybe with Yehonatan alive, an arrangement like that would have happened for generations before, and realistic. I mean, both David and Yehonatan were not too proud for that arrangement.
Yeah.
Were you able to watch that Possum guy?
No, it was too long. I wish I had time. Hold on a second. I want to check if I can hear. Hey. I'm not to show me what you told me. Sorry. No, I didn't have time, Scott, for this. It was.
He's interesting. I just don't know. Like he goes back and forth between being really condescending and really genuine.
It just looked too long to me, and I didn't really have time to deal with it. I'm sorry.
No, I was just.
What about me? We can't understand all the time.
No, this guy he died a couple of months ago. He's a British. His specialty was the Holocaust. And what I found interesting was he made a statement that I heard our most previous Rebbe and the bigger different Rebbe talk about, which is if Hashem is truly in charge, then there are two statements you have. He actually had a really interesting parallel with Satan. He said, look, he agrees with the Jewish belief that Satan is not an independent actor.
Oh, that's interesting for a Christian to say that.
So it was really fascinating. He said, there's no way. Yes, I believe Hitler was demonic, but I don't believe Satan can do anything without God's approval. If that's true, then the Holocaust had to have been part of God's overall plan, even if we don't understand it. It raises the question: is there any fault in the Jewish people for the Holocaust? Where I thought he went off the rails was he gave some explanations that are clearly Christian oriented, but it was.
I would say it is the usual teaching that there is not a disaster half of the Jews that does not have a little of punishment for the golden calf.
Well, that was it was just fascinating. He alternated. He was like really clear and cogent for a few minutes, and we go off on it. And it was just you had to really carefully listen to it and parse.
Really?
I thought it was fascinating. I'm not sure I would recommend it.
Sure. Okay. Wow.
Everyone listen to it. You have to spend a whole 3 hours.
Oh, Matzala made it. Wonderful. Don't worry, we still have cookies left. That means you're in a good position. Okay. So today we're going to discuss a little bit. Ruben showed me a little bit of what he was looking into, all kinds of different death cases in the Tanakh. We're going to discuss death penalty in light of Judaism. It has to do with the weekly portion. Re'en Shoftim speaks about appointing judges and the authority that's given to the judges, and so on and so forth. It was an incident in Israel, 1993, where a girl, lady, was viciously murdered, and they didn't know where she was. And about a week later, after the murder, the police arrested a Bedouin worker and accused him of killing the girl. And not only did they accuse him of killing the girl, they accused him of hiding the body of the girl in the dumpster in which this person was working. The reason they got to him was, there's an expression in Hebrew, maybe Betzalel would know that, Achaim bazevel. Did you ever hear that expression? Achaim bazevel? Achaim bazevel. Life is in the garbage, meaning somebody who was very disappointed, was upset, and so on. How's life? Life is in the trash, or life. Can you say that? You say that in English? Life is in. Anyway, he said life is in the garbage, and so is the girl. And so is the girl in the garbage. So, based on that, the police was able to find some evidence that tied this individual to the case. They put him into. They arrested him and they put him into a cell with an informer of the police, someone who's apparently a prisoner, detainee, but is actually a policeman or works for the police. And this person was able to, through a friendly conversation, get out from this individual of how he killed the girl. The problem is that she wasn't found where they thought she would be found. They found her in a complete different and remote place. And also, after he was convicted, he actually appealed through his lawyer, saying that the confession was taken from him with force, and he wasn't completely aware. And they actually had to reopen the case years later, probably 10 years or so. They only found the girl two years later in a complete different place. I mean, whatever was left from the corpse, and they had to reopen the case. It's something like that, about around that time, and they decided that there was not enough evidence to claim otherwise. So they said whatever he said was enough, and then he's being acquitted from that thereafter. And the reason why they gave it was actually got to the minister of justice. There was a guy named Daniel Friedman, and he was taking this case as something that they wanted to do about. And what they said was, eventually, since the conviction was not unanimous, it wasn't everyone, all the judges together saying, therefore we have a doubt in this conviction, and therefore they open it up, and then they realized that some of the things that were said were not true, and they ended up giving this person his life back, in which he was dismissed. He was released from prison. Also in Israel, as like in the United States and in many other countries, a conviction has to be given in a unanimous way. there's between the judge and the jury. I'm not sure exactly how it works in the United States, but in Israel, there's an extreme case in which a military court could rule a death penalty to a terrorist. But even if that is to be done, the decision has to be done unanimously. Military court is made out of several high-ranking officers, and they all have to agree and consent at the same time, and only then it will escalate to actual execution. In fact, if you'd like to know, Israel had never executed an individual aside from Adolf Eichmann, who was sentenced in Israel. And of course, this was a big deal. It was even broadcasted in the United States at that time. But other than Eichmann, nobody else was executed by rule of law to date in Israel. What?
I read that there was one more person executed, but that was not exactly the rule of law, and not exactly Israel. It was, I think, during the war of
the Milchemet Atzmaut, the independence, independence war.
He was accused of treason, and then after executing him, they found he was innocent. I think that's kind of big.
I know what you mean.
And they decided not to execute
anyone. It wasn't by the rule of law. It was, they got carried away. I know what you mean. I forgot the name. They thought he was a traitor, and eventually they saw he wasn't. Yeah. Anyways, no, it wasn't a lynch. It was shot. He was shot by it. What's interesting to note with regards to Jewish court is that, in fact, the opposite is the case, which is, in case all judges agree unanimously, I wouldn't say agree, but all judges begin their justice with saying that the defendant is guilty. If everyone together, not one single, and soon we'll see what does it mean, everyone together, it's 23, it's 71, we'll soon see the numbers of judges in Jewish Supreme Court. If all judges start their court case with determining that this individual is guilty, then he is acquitted. If everybody together says guilty, he is acquitted. Make sense? No. We'll soon see why. Okay, let's look at what Maimonides says. When all the judges of a Sanhedrin begin their judgment of a case involving capital punishment and say that the defendant is liable, he is exonerated. There must be some who seek to exonerate him and argue on his behalf, but yet the majority hold him liable. Only then he is executed. Milchemet Mitzvah, one of the interpreters of the Rambam, only if they begin with saying guilty, not if they reach the conclusion after a discussion. And of course, the question is which means how could it be? What is it? Oh, short. Okay. What is he saying? He's writing something. Okay, Josh, I'll get it to you later. Anyways, Maimonides says, Rambam says, if everyone begins with this, then he is acquitted. And the question is, why? How could it be? What do you mean? We will soon see how a court case is supposed to look like according to Jewish law, and why capital punishment is so rare that we'll see the quote soon, that if a court had executed someone once in 70 years, they're considered lethal. They're people with their hand easily on the trigger. And we'll soon see why exactly is this the case, and how it means, what it means about nowadays. The first thing we want to discuss with is Moses. Moses is the one presenting the words. We say that every week now when we talk about the book of Deuteronomy. Moses is representing, he's telling them, retelling them everything, all the occurrences that happened with them ever since the beginning of time. And the Mechilta says something interesting about Moses, saying that as soon as he was born, he actually had an urge for justice. He sought justice in everything. In everything he did, he wanted the justice to be clear, right? And here's what the Mechilta says on Moses. Remember the Torah of Moses, my servant, Ask the Mechilta now, is it not the Torah of God? What does it mean the Torah of Moses? The Torah of God. Because he devoted his life to it, it is called by his name. Another thing which he says about is the Jewish people, Israel, because he devoted his life to Israel, they were called by his name. And another thing, he devoted his life to judges, and they were called by his name. Judges and officers shall you appoint for yourself in all of your gates. Now is justice not the Lord's? How then are we to understand shall you appoint for yourself? Because he devoted his life to them, they were called by his name. And if we look closely at the story of Moses ever since he was born, the thing that he liked the most and had an urge for is justice. The first story we know about Moses coming out of his palace. He grew up in Pharaoh's palace as Pharaoh's grandson. We spoke about it in several occasions. And he walks out and he sees people fighting, right? The first instance he saw an Egyptian man hurting a Hebrew man, an Israelite, and he kills the Egyptian. And then the second day when he goes out and he sees the two people fighting, they tell him, Mi samcha leish sar v'shofet. Who appointed you as a judge on us? And we realize that Moses had an urge to be a judge from the very beginning. Yeah?
I could argue that Moshe killed the Egyptian, but not as judgment, but in the middle of the commission of the crimes to prevent the crime from getting even worse.
Yeah.
Which is the murder rule of death.
He was right. He was about to kill the Israelite, and Moses basically the only way to save the
So
Hebrew.
he was not a judge.
Correct, but look at that. The second day when he comes out, they call him, "Who are you as a judge?" Meaning they understood that he comes with a pattern. Yes, you're right. That was an extreme case, and it needed extreme measures, and it ended in an extreme manner. But on the other hand, on the second day when he came out and he wanted to realize what goes on, and he asked them to stop, they were fighting, and he said, "Stop." And they said, "Who are you as a judge? Who appointed you as a judge?" That's what they answered to Moses. Yes?
So do we strive for justice?
Is what?
Do we strive for justice?
Yes, we do.
Why should then Reuben learn one more language to participate in our discussion while most others don't?
Why shouldn't Reuben learn one more language?
English. To participate in our discussion while others don't, and
well, that's
it's not fair.
Very tough question you have. I think we'll have to.
Can you ask my
we'll gather.
Or?
We'll gather a court, a Supreme Court, and see. And here is the division. You shall appoint judges. So we have a court of 3, court of 23, and then the Sanhedrin, the Supreme Court of 70 on. Court of 3, normally they're authorized to deal with monetary matters, right? You owe me, I owe you, money, and all these things that don't involve, it could be serious sums of money, but nothing more than monetary, which is mostly what, I don't know if somebody ever did the math, but from my understanding, most court cases are with monetary matters. It's not so much criminal offenses.
Civil law.
Yes, civil law probably. The second level is the court of 23. The court of 23 would have the authority to discuss matters of not only monetary matters, but also physical ones, right? And also it can reach the highest level of authority, which is the authority to take someone's life. In the Sanhedrin, the Supreme Court in Jerusalem was the legislator of Jewish religion, and it had to set with matters that related not single individuals or private people, but matters that involve the whole nation, such as setting the borders of the city of Jerusalem, sanctifying the month, knowing when the Jewish holidays would occur, right? We said this had to do with observing the moon and so on, adding another month to the year, turning the year into a leap year, and all these things that involved matters that are far more general than private people.
The court of 3 did that have a limit on, so like in America we have chancery courts and small claim courts. They typically deal with amounts that are below.
I don't recall of having an amount in which they were limited to. I guess in...
On the court of 3, we have to be less hypothetical. The court of 3 still exists.
Yes, okay. Well,
And still sometimes decides monetary
Yeah, it's
matters.
called rabbinical court, right?
But
Beit Din
you
Beit
said
Din
also
Rabbani. It's a.
they decide all of it.
Uh,
Okay, that's another question. Did the Court of Three ever have authority to decide capital cases?
no, it wasn't. It was beyond their authority. It's clear. It's clearly marked. Our sages bring it in. What? Pure monetary matters, or you could say.
But indirectly could, because it is an authority to decide the validity of a marriage, and that could indirectly produce a capital case.
In which a person is outside their marriage, but then they would not be able to judge this capital case.
No,
It would.
How is it related? I don't understand. Capital case and marriage.
Because if somebody was married, a woman was married to someone, and then she decided she doesn't like this person or whatever, and then they got a divorce, but the validity of the divorce was not right, so she was not divorced from this person. She went and married another person. Then it relates. Oh, maybe that's not a capital punishment. That's no, that's mamzer. That's mamzer.
Consider her a whore and stone.
Hey. Hey, all the way from Taidong.
So the court of three then would be a general jurisdiction. The court of three would be specifically limited to monetary.
Yes.
So,
Hello, Lisa. Ni hao, ni hao, ni hao.
Well, not only monetary, perhaps the most important case these days is the validity of a conversion. Is that the Court of Three?
Yes, conversion is made in court of three. It's not requiring more than that. Yeah.
About that woman who left her husband, etc., shouldn't they consider her a whore and stone her?
No. First of all, there's no stoning for being a prostitute. That's not. You'll be
It's a kind of
you'll be
very
reading
direct thing.
you'll be reading different sources. That's
It's a kind of very direct thing.
all you.
No. I asked after a couple of bullets.
Okay.
So 23 is general jurisdiction.
Yes.
There's monetary. And
Yeah.
capital.
Correct. But 23 are not bothered by monetary. If there's monetary matter, they'd send you to the 3. They
Yeah,
say.
So this would be intermediate court of appeals.
Yeah. I don't know whether. You see, that's something I wanted to find out today, and I didn't have time to. Whether there's such a system of an appeal where somebody on the 23 court says, I want to go to the 71, like somebody wants to go to the Supreme Court. Yes, but the question is whether this is the normal process. Could it happen? Yes, but the question is, does it? In many cases, somebody who's not happy with the ruling of one court could escalate it to a higher level, right? That's in civil.
In the American system, typically these first two courts, we would say that it's a chancery court for the first one, the court of three. 23 would be a general jurisdiction that can hear any case, even though they may not choose to hear the monetary one.
Mm-hmm.
The Sanhedrin never did a fact finding. It was always a general broad discussion of national, not calling witnesses.
Okay.
Does that sound like
I wonder. I'm not sure. I don't want to say yes because I'm not sure that the answer is such. But it makes sense. But I don't want to say yes because I don't know. Anyway, death penalty was abolished 40 years before the second destruction. That was the last time that death penalty had happened. That's what the Talmud quotes in Avodah Zarah. And the reason for that, the Sanhedrin was annulled. There was no longer Sanhedrin. And since it says, since it says that the authority is kept to the Sanhedrin, even though death penalty, capital punishment could be judged by 23, because the Sanhedrin is displaced, then the 23 judges are no longer authorized to give a verdict, psak din, of death penalty. So even though 23 are there, but because the 71, the Sanhedrin, is no longer there, then they are not allowed to give such a verdict with regards to capital punishment.
What's the difference between 23 and 3 then?
So 3 monetary matters are still left, and because that it has to do with Vasita Asher Mulcha Min Hakom Hahu. I should have quoted the Talmud. I looked in Avodah Zarah.
In that situation, what's the difference between 23 and 3? They still sit at 23.
Okay, but they're not right. Okay, so maybe probably they don't need that. So maybe 23 was also not needed any longer because.
Did say there's a difference. The court of 3 is limited in its scope to monetary.
Yes.
So 23 has
Okay, yeah, it has to do with different things, but not capital punishment. Okay, yeah, you're right. That's probably the difference. Yeah.
So if all three were in place, a court of 23 would have the ability to issue a death penalty.
Right.
Is that because the Sanhedrin was the final check on that system?
Yes, that's one, but it's also more of a spiritual reason that it has to do, once the Sanhedrin is there, once the Jewish Supreme Court is in place, that means the justice system is all aligned. Everything is in its place. Once the main ingredient, so to speak, or I don't know if it's the overseeing body, I don't know if the 71 judges would randomly check the 23, oh guys, what are you doing here? Why are you killing this guy? Or you should be, I don't know whether this was the case. And that's something I tried to find out today, but I didn't have much time to. In any event, Rambam, Maimonides counts in Laws of Sanhedrin, and I didn't bring the whole list because I'm sorry, but it's a long list. 18 people stoning, some people burning, and I sent a message of the class to a friend of mine, an Israeli fellow who lives here, and one of the things I wrote, why is it nearly impossible to execute someone? And he says to me, nearly impossible. I studied my bar mitzvah portion. It says, kill them, kill this, kill him, mot yumat, he says, what are you talking about? So many people are supposed to die. I said, well, that's in theory. Yeah, in theory, but in practice, no, nobody gets killed. It says that they will kill them, but it doesn't happen. And he said, why? I said, you're going to have to come tonight to listen, but he didn't come. Yeah.
Is there 18 people mean 18 kinds of people?
18 kinds.
18 countries?
18 kinds of people, yeah.
I come late, so if I understand it correctly, if I'm mistaken.
Specifically by stoning.
Correct me if I'm mistaken. If the Sanhedrin is standing on its place, then the 23 can grant the
death penalty.
The moment the Sanhedrin is abolished, the
yes.
23 doesn't have the authority.
Exactly. And that happened 40 years, some 40 years.
Yeah. Because the Sanhedrin stayed in place, operating for many years, but not imposing a death penalty. That already annulled the ability of Court of 23 to impose death penalty. Even Sanhedrin was present.
Interesting. He said the Sanhedrin did not allow the death penalty to happen even while they were in place.
Even before the temple, though, under Roman law, the Sanhedrin was prohibited.
Yes, so under Roman law, and correct me if I'm wrong, there were a lot of limitations. The autonomy of the Jewish people was not as it was. Definitely not in the time of the first temple, and even not in the time of Babylonian exile. But under Roman, I don't know whether the Persians let us, when the Persians built the second one, they let us complete autonomy.
They did last sufficient autonomy as Sanhedrin was able at least in theory to impose a penalty. In the way it's described sometimes the text is, did the Sanhedrin was able to sit in the hall of home stones.
Mm-hmm.
And you remember that description.
What did Reuben say concerning what I said?
He said that not only, you said if the Sanhedrin is not there, no death penalty. He said even if the Sanhedrin is there, if they decide now there's no death penalty, now there's no death penalty. Even if they are they're still in place.
Yeah, okay.
If they decide. And we're talking about when Israel or Judea or whatever it is was under the Romans were there, did they allow them to practice? Yeah, because we said that 40 years before the destruction they stopped. So the question is whether they stopped, like Reuben said, on their own initiative, or that they stopped because they were forced to stop. Because they were forced to stop because the Romans said, yeah, we don't know. We said we would find out.
Yeah. Certainly, when the Sanhedrin finally disbanded and stopped operating, that was Roman doing.
Yeah.
But there were many years in which the Sanhedrin could operate, but not apply the penalty. And the question that was their own decision was Roman.
Or was it forced on it?
Whatever the case, we know consequence. The court of the decree could not impose the penalty.
Yeah, just a second. Bezalel, what?
He mentioned 18 people, but I see only 3.
There was 18 for stoning, 15 for burning, and the list was so long and very boring, so I didn't bring the whole thing. I just did.
I'd love to see it anyway.
I'll send you the link by all means.
Stoning,
and there's suffocation. Yeah. It's quite horrible, I could tell you. I mean, I read it this morning and
and none of them are applied the way
talking about another source, that you bring another source.
Yeah.
According to that source,
yeah.
we have to say, according to that source, that the Roman abolished, take the power from the Sanhedrin to kill.
Okay.
Because Pontius Pilatus judged him.
Okay. Okay. I'll take you on this one. בסדר גמור. Okay. So what does it mean? What does it mean? As I said, there's a lot of examples. Some of them are weird and some of them are understood. And the question is, it says about someone who desecrates Shabbos, who violates Shabbos. What does it mean that he's liable for a death penalty? Is it someone that we're supposed to get rid of? Someone that the world is better without him? Right? Someone who is a murderer, someone who's crazy, who hurts people, and the only way of stopping him is getting rid of him. You would say a terrorist, someone who has not only the means, but the plan and the option and the motivation to kill people. We need to stop him.
Outside the purview of the usual Jewish system, it could be an issue of safety of the community.
Correct. So the question is, what is a death penalty according to Jewish law? Is it a punishment to someone? Is it a deterrent? Something to stop people? Don't do that because you would have a death penalty. Don't go that path. Or is it really, this person really deserves to die and we are here to execute him on behalf of God? So we want to find out, yeah?
On the fact of God, to be quite direct, because there is still another category. Crimes that are known to be crimes, but the punishment is not in human hands.
That is what we say, by the way, what you just said is what we say about cases that we don't give the death penalty. And we say, okay, the world is not a jungle. If we are not able to get rid of this person, even though we agree that this person might not be the best person ever, Hashem, God has His ways. People have heart attacks, people eat something and suffocate, people die in car accidents, okay, no cars, they fall from the donkey. A lot of, people drown and they go to the swim and all these things. And we say, okay, Hashem has His ways. You don't have to be, you do what you need to do. If it's beyond your power, the world is not a jungle. Hashem knows. Yeah, we say, it's Misa B'dei Shamayim. I guess probably that's the way where we say where the person is absolved. Right, we don't have circumstantial evidence or forensic evidence, but so the court doesn't have the ruling, but Hashem has His ways. What?
You said about desecrating Shabbat.
Yeah.
Does it
violating? I meant to say violating. I said.
Well, does it mean that the person doesn't observe Shabbat, or the person interfere with other people observing it?
Well, it could be both ways, but it's also about a person not observing Shabbat. And you ask a question. Well, a lot of people don't observe Shabbat. Many people don't learn the rules of Shabbat. They don't even know what to observe and what not to observe, right? So that's my question here. I'm asking, what is about this death penalty?
But it's only about Jewish people.
Yes. Yeah.
Because there was one guy who desecrated Yom Kippur, and then they invited him to the Knesset and shook hands with him. You know who I'm talking about.
No, I'm not sure. Who is?
Anwar Sadat.
Anwar Sadat.
Yes.
What did he do on Yom Kippur?
He invaded Israel.
Start the war of Yom Kippur.
Yeah.
I don't think that's the biggest issue that we had with him by invading was Yom Kippur. If it was 2 days before Yom Kippur, it would still be because the roads were empty. The roads. We had the standing here where I am. We had a physician.
That was just very mean.
Yeah. Correct. Sanhedrin is reserved. The word Sanhedrin is reserved for the 71. It will be a court of justice. Sanhedrin is only. But let's look what the Talmud is saying about death penalty as a punishment or as a deterrent. A Sanhedrin that executes a transgressor once in 7 years is characterized as a destructive tribunal, Beit Din Katlani. Since the Sanhedrin would subject the testimony to exacting scrutiny, it was extremely rare for a defendant to be executed. 7 years. Look at the next one. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah say this categorization applies to a Sanhedrin that executes a transgressor once in 70 years. Rabbi Tarfon and Rabbi Akiva say if we had been members of the Sanhedrin, which they weren't, they lived in a different time, we would have conducted trials in a manner whereby no person would have ever been executed. We would make it so that nobody, 0, 0, 0, nobody, no execution. Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel says, in adopting that approach, they too would increase the number of murderers among the Jewish people. The death penalty would lose its deterrent value as all potential murderers would know that no one is ever executed. So Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says going extreme is also not very smart, because they will know, okay, no such thing. Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Tarfon, no deterrent, nobody's anymore. So from this discussion, we see that there has to be a death penalty because it has to serve as a deterrent. But on the other hand, very, very bad. It's not even balanced. It's not balanced. It's very extreme to
yeah. So of course there are crazy people among Jews as well who commit terrible crimes, but there are few. Does this apply to Goyim, like Haman, Hitler, Eichmann?
In fact,
those deserve to be killed.
Yeah, I agree with you. What?
Okay, it is known that the duty established in tribunal of justice is one of the duties of 7 laws of Noachites.
Correct.
And such tribunal has also powers to impose death penalties.
Okay, he's right with regards to non-Jews are only instructed by God for the 7 laws of Noah. Among them is the prohibition of murder. So based on this, because they are under these 7 laws of Noah, we are entitled. They could do so on their own. It doesn't have to be a Jewish court, but we are also entitled to judge them. But you cannot judge a non-Jew for not circumcising or violating Shabbat or eating pork, or because they're allowed to do so, and it's not in their world, right?
The example you said definitely brought us rules of Noah.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. All examples that you said.
By the way, Rabbi.
Yeah.
By the way, Gentile is obligated, if you work in a job, to be honest.
Yes.
For example, if somebody works in security at night and you watch movie all night, by God he will be judged as not honest person.
Well, that's interesting. You're saying someone who doesn't do their job properly.
Gentile.
Yeah, okay, I hear you. Someone who doesn't do their job properly. You're asking whether in the eyes of Hashem this is considered as I guess it has to be discussed. I don't know the answers to it. I would want to say yes, but I'm not I'm not sure. No, we're not. This is not capital. No.
And the rules of the sons of Noah still can bring capital punishment.
Okay, I suggest you keep your opinions to yourself. This is recorded, so.
The rules of the son of Noah can be very harsh.
Interesting. מעניין. זו שאלה טובה, כמה דוגמה טובה.
אחד משבע מצוות בני נוח זה להיות ישר עם כסף.
כן. לא לגנוב.
לא צריך לגנוב מהכיס.
נכון.
אם מישהו משלם לך עבור עובדה מסוימת ואתה לא עושה אותה, אתה גונב כסף.
לא לגנוב, נכון, אני מסכים איתך. So in order to make the death penalty not so easy to execute, our sages list, and Rambam brings a list of impediments, blockage, machsomim, that you will see so many things has to happen at the same time for this person to be liable on a death penalty. And Maimonides brings some of them. You wanted to ask something?
Yes.
Okay.
I wanted to bring it in perspective. In a free society, normally the crimes against the government are punished less than crimes against private people.
Okay.
And in a society like communist or similar.
How did you get to communism again?
They do the opposite. The crime against the state is the heaviest, and for stealing a certain amount, you get death penalty.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, go to North Korea today. But now in America, they're turning that way. Look what they're doing to people like Snowden.
Snowden? What about him?
Well, he's hiding in Russia because in America they would put him at the death penalty for spying.
Well, maybe he deserves that. I don't know. I'm not there in a position to say death penalty, but I don't know what. I don't know much about Snowden
but he
too.
hasn't killed anyone.
Okay. Well, in Russia, I don't think that he's treated so nicely anyways. Okay, death penalty impediments. The Rambam says several things. It is scriptural decree that the court does not execute a person or have him lashed because of his sin, because of his own admission. Somebody comes to court, I did it. You know this girl you're looking for that is dead? I killed her. So we go, okay, you killed her. No, you cannot. Instead, the punishments are given on the basis of the testimony of two witnesses. You killed her? Where are the witnesses? Bring witnesses and then we'll take you seriously. Just because you say you killed her? Rambam says, maybe you're crazy. Perhaps he is one of those embittered people who are anxious to die and pierce their reins with swords or throw themselves from rooftops. Similarly, you fear that such a person may come and admit committing an act that he did not perform so that he will be executed.
Interesting. This way he also gets away from another possibility. Because otherwise, self-incrimination is in itself a minor crime. Rambam gets away from that as stating very proudly who self-incriminates is also innocent of the charge of self-incrimination. Because he has the defense of being insane.
Okay, good. I didn't notice that. How is warning? Okay, in order to somebody to be liable for death penalty, you have to warn them. You don't warn them in advance. You have to warn them while the action is going on. How is warning administered? We tell them, desist, chadol, atzor, or don't do it. It is a transgression and you are liable to be executed by court or to receive lashes for it. If he seizes, he's not liable. Similarly, if he remains silent or nods his head, it does like this with him. Mind your own business. He says to you, mind your own business. What does this have to do? Right? Or he's silent or nods his head. He's not liable for punishment. Even if he says, I know. You say, stop. He says, death penalty. I know. He's not liable for punishment until he accepts death upon himself, saying, it is for this reason that I'm doing this. In such a situation, he's executed. So there has to be a full exchange. You don't... הוא צריך להגיד להם, אני רוצה לקבל עונש מוות. I want... אז אתה חוזר לפה, and then you go back. It's like computer, you go back to the other one. And you say, okay, this guy's crazy. You go, right? So I'm saying this is like all these things that are to stop the death penalty. Blockage, impediments, all these things. So it has to be, the warning has to be administrated at the same time, and they have to give consent, right? Not only the witnesses need to see. Once, I think the Rambam brings it, I forgot to bring, I thought of this quote. The Rambam brings of how much the interrogation of the witnesses, and they say, okay, Mr. So-and-so killed Mr. A. And you say, okay, were you there? Yeah, we were there. Did you see him killing him? Yeah. Okay, what was Mr. So-and-so wearing? He was wearing this clothes, that clothes. And then they're saying, where did it happen? It happened next to a fig tree. So they asked the witnesses, are the figs black or the figs are green? One witness says, the figs were black. Another witness says the figs were green, or I don't know. You can't give him a death penalty because it's not 100%. Maybe you're mistaken. Maybe you're hallucinating. Maybe. No, not that he's where there's between. They're not conspiring against him, but they just don't know all the details, right? And they have to see the stabbing, and soon we'll see another case in which they stab someone and they say, no, he was already dead before he stabbed him. I'll soon give you a quote. What?
Basically, this is setting up to where the death penalty is virtually impossible to carry out.
Virtually impossible. I would accept that definition, and it's made in a certain way for that reason. Yeah.
To support Scott about eyewitness unreliability, there is a circumstantial evidence that can come from a confession. For example, he will tell the judge, the accused person will tell the judge where he hid the corpses.
Yeah.
And when they find corpses under every tree that he pointed out, then do you need eyewitnesses?
Even then, you need witnesses to witness the action.
Or to follow the procedure. If the question is knowing what happened, I would agree with what Salah said. But it says knowing. It's not enough to know.
Maybe he was just the one that's hiding the people. Maybe somebody else killed him. Maybe he was cooperating with someone. His job in the gang was just to hide the corpses. All these things, we need clear-cut evidence. We need two people witnessing, not only seeing, having all the evidence, warning him, stop. And he say, I know. And he says, I know. No, not. He says, I want to die. I want the death penalty. And only then. And of course, look at another thing. The Mishnah in Makot. The Mishnah teaches that the Rabbi Tarfon and Rabbi Akiva says, if we had been members of the Sanhedrin, remember, we would have conducted the trials in a manner no person would ever been executed. They said, if we are there, So the Gemara asks, how would they act? Is it to spare the accused from execution if witnesses testified that he intentionally committed murder? They were there, they saw him, they warned him. Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Elazar both say that he would have asked the witness, did you see whether the accused killed a treifa? Treifa is a person, trefa, a person in a condition that would lead to his death within 12 months. Or if he killed someone who was intact. The halachic statute of treifa is like that one of who is dead. A person who is alive, he's alive and well, but if he's going to die in 12 months, in 1 year, he's dead now. He's already now. He's called treifa. Okay? Who is dead in the sense that once it kills him, he's not executed. It says no witness can certain with regard to the victim's physical condition. You don't know what he has. He has something or he doesn't have. He's eating too much. He's got cholesterol. He's got coronavirus. You don't know that. They don't know what coronavirus is. We don't know. They didn't know. They would invalidate that in testimony of murder. So you'd say you killed someone. You killed someone. He was like that. He was. How do you know? Did you see?
The date of death.
So I'm saying, how do you know that this person was completely healthy? How would you know that this person would not die of health reasons, not falling from a mountain of health? How would you know? So that's how they would say. They weren't in the Beit Din, but that's what they would say. They were not there. So that's how they would cope with about killing someone. They say, oh, we don't know. Maybe this guy was dead already. He was there. He was alive. He was talking, but he was already dead because he was having some illness that would have killed him eventually within a month, within 12 months. So again, all this system and all these blockades and impediments are in order to prevent killing someone who is not liable for death penalty, right? And in fact, we say that that there is one example in Torah where death penalty is about to be given. This is the story of Tamar. Tamar, right? She was the wife of Judah's sons, and then Judah first son, and then Judah second son, and then we know the story. He was out, and she conceived, and then Judah decided that this is impossible, this is immoral, and so on and so forth. And then as soon as Judah was brought the evidence, even not in a direct manner, right? She gave it to him in hiding, to the man that this belonged, and then he decided, no, we can't execute her. She was righteous, it's because of me, it's from me. And we could see that the first attempt to execute someone according to Torah law already failed. So that teaches us, even the first, we don't even have an example of a death penalty who's administrated. We have death penalties, we have death in the Torah, but administrated in such a way. What, Bezalel?
I am very uneasy with this notion of writing off a sick person. You know the story of Job.
Yeah.
He was in such doldrums, and then he got everything back. He recovered.
Okay.
And if somebody saw him at that time, and somebody killed him at that time when he was down, they would say, "Oh, he was about to die anyway." How do you know?
I agree with you, and this argument is only used in order to counter. We say, if we were there, nobody would execute. Oh, really? What if somebody would kill someone and you couldn't avoid it? We would say, oh, maybe this person was already dead. It's not to tell us that he's dead and therefore you're allowed to kill him. It means that argument is only brought in the context of what they're trying to prove. They're trying to say, you could never know if the sword really killed this guy or was already dead. Now, could he heal from his illness? Maybe, yeah. I guess medicine was not as developed as it is today, but they had ways to cure people, and they had ways people went to doctors in those days.
Comes from there.
Yeah, it does.
All right, from all what you say, it's not give me any other option but to say that the punishment of death in the Torah, the reason is not deterrence. Because if the reason is deterrence, there is no deterrence. You try to make so many blockages.
But you don't.
The reason is to find the truth. The truth.
But as a simple person, you don't know all that. I mean, you could study that, you could learn that. But when a person is about to commit a crime, they say, oh, you shouldn't do it because there's a death penalty. They say, oh, but once in 70 years, I'm sure I'll get away with it. I'm sure. Yeah, okay, but obviously there's some ways of dealing with everything. Somebody says, okay, it's not going to happen to me, right? People say,
yeah. Very, very little.
but the chance that it's like people playing the roulette russe with 1 of 6. So this 1 of 70 years, but because the chance exists, it would use as a deterrent. So what do we have to learn about this, about death penalty in our days? Here's a letter written in 1981 by Moshe Feinstein, one of the most prominent rabbis in the United States, and the governor of New York. Just like today, capital punishment, I know some states in America have it. Taiwan has it, by the way, and other countries have it. Other countries stopped it. But the constant debate of whether or not to have a death penalty reached Moshe Feinstein, the governor of New York. His name was, I think I have it here.
Como.
No, that was Como is the current one. This is 35 years ago or so. Here, huge. What is the name? Hugh Carey. Okay, yeah. Rabbi Moshe Feinstein, 1981, the most outstanding rabbinical authority in the United States at the time, was asked by the governor of New York, Hugh Carey, to present the Orthodox Jewish approach to capital punishment, which was then, as ever, a controversial topic in the state. In his answer, this is brought in Igot Moshe, Volume 2, Choshen Mishpat, Moshe constantly emphasizes not the underlying liability to capital punishment, but rather the many different practical obstacles, what we just said, that the Torah's justice system, as explained in Talmud, places in the way of actual execution of this punishment. אז משה פיינשטיין נותן לו, בהתחלה הוא לא מדבר רק כן או לא, קורא לו תשמע, בשביל להוציא מישהו להורג, אתה שואל אותי אם יהודים מוצאים להורג, בוא תשמע מה צריך, ונותן לו רשימה, מה שדיברנו עכשיו. ואז הוא אומר לו ככה, first of all, Moshe explained, the death penalty is mentioned in the Torah only for the gravest transgression, which will be committed by people who are completely amoral. He goes on to state that even those punishments, even these punishments are not out of hate for the wrongdoers, or even out of concern for the stability of society, but rather so that people should be aware of the seriousness of this prohibition. And therefore would not transgress. Indeed, even these punishments are tempered by sensitivity to the importance of each soul. To the extent that the technical requirements for carrying out a death penalty were next to impossible. What'd you say? Virtually impossible? Yeah, next to impossible to fulfill. That no circumstantial evidence is accepted, that warning of the penalty is given and acknowledged before the crime is committed, and so on. So this is what he says to him. Very difficult. Hold on, I'll just finish what he says. For this reason, Rav Moshe explained, the death penalty was never customary in Jewish communities, even when the secular government authorized them to employ it. And even so, this is a quote, in all generations there were virtually no murderers among the Jews because of the gravity of the prohibition, and because they were educated by the Torah and by the punishment of the Torah to understand the gravity of the prohibition, and not because they were simply afraid of the punishment. He says, we actually do a very good job in history. There are not many murderers. Of course, every rule has exception. There aren't many murderers, not because they are afraid to be killed by the court, but because the reason there's such a thing called death penalty, that itself serves as a deterrent. However, Rav Moshe adds that in a case of a particularly cruel murderer, or in a situation where bloodshed becomes widespread and out of control, shfichut damim, out of control, there is justification for the authorities to carry out the death penalty in order to restore respect for the law. So Moshe Feinstein gives him a very Jewish answer. He says no, but he says yes, but he says maybe, but yes, but no, but and he gives him. Of course, there's no decisive answer. It wasn't a letter that was supposed to be answered with one yes, no, right? He says.
What would be the theoretical justification for that? Even if it's not the rules of the din, is it the rules of the power of the king, or is the rules of the power of the court of the Noach?
I guess it's the court of the Noach. It's not a monarchy. It's not. We said the king is exception. King has his ways of doing things, and if he needs to kill someone based on what grounds he wants, that's doable. That's feasible. I guess monarchy doesn't. Does monarchy exist today? I don't know. In any.
For some purposes, state government
And the rest of the
some of the rules of monarchy may apply to other forms of government.
Okay.
Does this last name override due process?
This is what?
Does this last name override due process? In
then you don't have to go through the penalty?
No, it says that the question is whether you keep it as an option or not. Would you abolish death penalty, meaning no such thing? But Moshe Feinstein says, okay, in practice, we don't kill people. It's very difficult to really get a death penalty in Judaism. But we leave it hanging there.
We don't abolish.
Yeah, we leave it hanging there because it serves. And he says to him, and okay, don't just leave it hanging there. Sometimes, and the reason it's hanging there is because sometimes it's applicable. What?
Eichmann got a due process.
Yes.
Very good due process.
Correct. With witnesses and evidence. Yeah.
Yes. So, if they caught Borman or Dr. Alfred Mengele or any of those, they would probably be hanged as well.
Correct.
Sorry?
Yeah, but the Manyuk didn't find sufficient evidence. There was a sufficient evidence. It was a due process. Okay, so you're trying to say.
Much smaller fry than those.
Okay. So wait a second. Let me finish the question. Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. There would be more if they caught more.
Yeah. Well, they had their secret operations to get rid of a lot of crap in South America and other people. Some people they brought to justice, and some people the only way of bringing them to justice was putting a bullet through their brains, which is. Yeah, that's also right. We should state that this is the fact that a court in Israel did that does not necessarily reflect the Torah way. It's it's a civil court. It's not a court that's authorized by Torah, and they don't necessarily follow the rules of Torah.
Can we worship another God?
No, that's.
But even Rabbi Feinstein.
Yes.
If you quote him.
Yes.
Instead of Eichmann, I think he is.
Oh yeah, it says.
In the category of the people that have to be.
Yeah.
If not in the code.
Not just in hanging there, but yeah. It has to be applied. Yeah, and that's why he says that in the end.
The Nazi examples are emotionally charged, but at least in my Shlomo wasn't saying vote with me. In America, we have examples of people who are just the evil people, like Jeffrey Dahmer,
Manson,
Ted Bundy,
Charles Manson.
Yeah, so you can find people who fit this category in a country of 400 million people.
Oh, absolutely.
Find that more frequently, where someone's just. But am I correct in saying that this has to be a person so amoral that it's better to cut the arm off and lose the entire body, essentially?
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, there could be. Yeah, there are cases like that. What happens with regards to, another question. It could be practical in our days. A person who is judged by in a country that gives a death penalty, are we supposed to help them run away, escape from that country? About 15 years ago in Thailand, they arrested an Israeli citizen who was involved in a vicious murder of his ex-wife, and he actually asked.
You went to Bet Chabad.
Yeah. Oh, you were there. Oh my goodness.
No, I read it in the newspaper.
He asked for Israel. He said, "Oh, save me! They're going to kill me here, and please help me to get out." I don't remember how the story ended, but
Thailand or Jewish?
I believe it was under Thai law, so I guess it had to do with what happened in Thailand, or maybe he killed. No, it was a Jewish wife, but killed her in Thailand. It had to do with Thailand. So yeah, he killed her in Thailand. Yeah. So some.
Thailand, by the way, prostitution is illegal.
Prostitution is illegal?
Yes, really.
You should tell him that. A lot of people go. So שאלו כמה רבנים והם לא ידעו, אמרו שכן צריך לתת להסגיר אותו, שמגיע לו עונש מיתה. מה זה הדבר הזה אני לא יודע, אתה יודע, אני רציתי לברר על זה, לא מצאתי הרבה מידע. אני יכול לשאול? יש.
הוא הרב נחמיה היה בשוק, הם גינו אותו
Here, there was, like 2 decades ago, there was a case that one jerk kidnapped the South African ambassador and his family and killed a few people in the process of surrounding with the police. Eventually, they executed him.
מה? אתה רוצה ללכת? טוב לראות אותך.
אתה תשלח לי את
בעזרת
הסדר
השם. כן, כן,
בהתאם
כן,
לכמה
מה שדובר. כן, כן, כן. אין
Bye
בעיה.
everybody, God
Okay.
bless you.
Have a good one, Meir.
Thank you.
להתראות.
Okay. So, okay, let's look a little bit about what we started with. When we said everybody says he's guilty, then he's not guilty. And the question is why? And let's get back to that. What we're going to see now is that when there's an argument, when we have to show our opinion and prove it and confront counter arguments, we get to the truth. This is the only way, in fact, to getting to the truth. Here's what the Midrash Shmuel says. Through argument and presenting opposite opinions, truth is to be found. This matter was not known to the critics of our sages, who did not understand why, if all judges begin with finding the defendant guilty, is acquitted. But the reason is, since when there is no opposition among the judges, and no one would need to defend his opinion and counter arguments, it is indeed impossible to reach the truth. Sample for that we have from Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish. We know the famous story. We also discussed that here several times. Reish Lakish was the head of the gangsters in those days. He was a fine Jewish boy who unfortunately found himself in a very not Jewish situation, and Rabbi Yochanan had affected Reish Lakish to change his ways, to repent, and to become a scholar, a sage. He was a genius, and Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish were studying all these years. And then when Reish Lakish died, Rabbi Yochanan was very sorry, and he felt very bad, and he was very ill in his bed. So they sent Rabbi Yochanan another person, and they wanted him to study, because what his life was the study. When his pal Reish Lakish died, he had nobody to study, and they sent him another person. And Rabbi Yochanan started studying with this person, and he said, "Oh, I think this is what he's supposed to do." And the other person said, "Yes." And he said, "What yes?" He said, "Yeah, I think you're right. You actually very smart." He says, "You're not supposed to say yes. When I studied with Reish Lakish, everything I'd ask him, I'd tell him, he would ask me 24 questions. And on every answer would give me more questions on it. And that is how we study." He said, "You can't be saying yes." And they brought him another person who was more sharp and more, and again, the same story. He's talking geniusly, and the person says,
The second person was not really Jewish.
and they said, "Yes." "Well, what do you mean yes? You can't be saying yes." And you know what happened to Rabbi Yochanan? He went crazy. He went crazy. He passed away, dying. He died crazy because he couldn't take it. That people agree with you. You're not supposed to agree with me. That's not how we learn. We have to argue. We need to find a way. You need to challenge me. I need to find the depth in what you say and what I say. And that's how it's done. And in fact, this is the process. You're talking about due process that has to happen with the Jewish Supreme Court in order to execute a person. If everybody says the same, it's really bad. It's really bad because you don't get the truth. You have to have somebody to argue with. If you say, right, you could find it with people who like to, I call them follow the winners. The people who don't have an opinion on their own. They don't know what they're voting. But when this guy's winning, "Oh yeah, I'm with this guy." And then the other guy, "Oh yeah, I was always with this guy." Follow the winners. Erev Rav. The Erev Rav who went out of Egypt? When the Jews were in Egypt, they go for the Egyptians. When the Egyptians were struck and the Jews left, they said, "Oh, of course we knew you were going to win. We always were with you." And they went with them. And you know what happened with the Erev Rav? The mixture of nations, they were the ones who did the golden calf. They weren't Jewish. They didn't belong. They just followed the winners. So they went with the flow, with the stream. "Yeah, now you're winning. Of course. We always knew you were going to go out of here. We always believed. Yeah, we should go with you." And we see these people don't have an opinion. Those are the people who agree to everything. But for us, like you said, this guy, you have to be Jewish. What do you mean? You can't be saying that, right? You can't say that. That makes no sense. And you argue and get to the truth and find the real reason behind things. Yeah?
There's a guy named Malcolm Aldrich, probably a writer. I just read his quotation. He said, "Only dead fish swim with the stream."
Uh-huh. Oh, I didn't know that's a quote from, what is his name? Malcolm?
Malcolm Aldrich.
Okay. Only dead fish.
I just remember.
Okay.
Now I learn why the minimum size of the most smallest crop must be 3, because you need one for each side, and still another one to
Breaking the wall.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It is brought.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
What's the time frame? When did they live? These Rabbi Yohanan and Reish Lakish.
This was
early Amorite times.
yeah. This after the destruction of the second temple. This is
Or Tanaitic times already. Tanaitic or Amorite times.
It's still. I think they were still Tanaim. Rabbi Yochanan was a Tana. I think they were still Tanaim. Oh, okay, yeah. So after the destruction, 100 years after the destruction, and the Rebbe brings a story from the Ramban. Ramban had a student named Avner. Avner was an individual who was very scholarly, and he deviated, he left religion completely. And later he encountered the Ramban, and the Ramban asked him, why did he go? And he said that, you said once that everything is hinted in Parashat Ha'azinu, and I was looking for my name, and I couldn't find it. And the Ramban, Nachmanides, told him immediately where his name is. It was a verse, Amarti Afeim Ashbita Menos Zichram. The third letter of every word combines the word Avner. And this is the meaning of the verse. I might have reduced them to not make the member he sees among men. And he realized that this is him. And Ramban, his rabbi, was right all the time. And he left. He vanished away, seized among men. That's what happened. And the Rebbe brings the story, and he says, interestingly, the word Avner, the name of this person, comes from here. Avner. But what about this? The Rebbe says this one goes to Rabbi. In fact, he was destined to be a rabbi. He had it within him. He could have been. He had it within him. So it's all there. And the reason I bring this story is in order to give us a little deeper understanding. It's not only when we argue with each other we get to the truth. The problem with seeing someone as guilty and seeing that person in guilty from the beginning means that you don't actually understand this person. You don't find the favor, you don't find the good in this person. And here's what Rambam says about, this is a very important quote. I divided it into several parts, but look at what the Rambam says about, we spoke about it, I think, also with regards to laws of divorce. The rule is, Marty, the rule is for a divorce that it has to be done willingly. The husband has to tell the wife and she has to consent. They need both to agree. Let me close the door. Sorry. The husband has to willfully give his wife a divorce. What happens if the husband doesn't want to give her a divorce? The rule is, okay, he needs to give her a divorce based on the condition. It has to be determined by the Beit Din. But what happens if he doesn't want?
This is for the purpose of freeing the woman.
Yeah.
If the question is rather that there is some doubt about that a woman is entitled to marry a Kohen or not, that man is not really required by the court.
Correct.
To suffer.
You are correct.
We force him to find, assuming all things are equal in this person, so assuming the base has been properly seated and they properly determined that the divorce should be issued, then there's something in Jewish law, and misquoted, but we help him find it.
Here, that's the quote I brought. Yeah.
What if it's the opposite, that the husband wants to divorce, but the wife doesn't let him go?
Well, they both have to consent. I don't know. I don't think you put pressure on her to let him go because he has to issue.
It's again very male chauvinistic centric.
It's not chauvinistic. You've been reading too many books and watching too many movies. My life in the real world, it doesn't work like this.
I watch movies once in 15 years.
Okay, well, it doesn't work like this in the real world. It's not about everybody's equal. We're all the same. No, we're not all the same. We're not created the same. We have different responsibilities and different liabilities. That's what life is about. It's not about Judaism doesn't.
From the obvious. Were not for the fact that it's a takana against men having more than one woman, this will be a non-issue.
We help him find the right side.
Okay, when a man whom the law requires to be compelled to divorce his wife does not desire to divorce her, the court should have him beaten until he consents, at which time they should have a get written. The get is acceptable. This applies at all times and in all places. Okay? We can just find a way to persuade him. Rambam says we beat him. Why is this get not void? For he's being compelled either by Jews or by Gentiles, Tony, right, to divorce against his will, and a divorce decree must be given voluntarily. Because the concept of being compelled against one's will applies only when speaking about a person who is being compelled and forced to do something that the Torah does not obligate him to do. For example, a person was beaten until he consented to sale or to give a present. There's no sale and the present is not really given. If, however, a person's evil inclination presses him to negate the observance of a mitzvah or to commit a transgression, and he was beaten until he performed the action he was obligated to perform, or he disassociated himself from the forbidden action, he is not considered to have been forced against his will. On the contrary, it is he himself who is forcing his own conduct to become debased. With regard to this person who outwardly refuses to divorce his wife, he wants to be a part of the Jewish people, and he wants to perform all the mitzvot and eschew all the transgressions. It is only his evil inclination that presses him. Therefore, when he is beaten until his evil inclination has been weakened and he consents to the divorce, he is considered to have performed the divorce willfully. This changes the whole picture. You say, oh, you know why he gave a divorce? Because we got Tony with a big baseball bat. That's why he got a divorce. And the answer is no. You know why he didn't want to get a divorce? Because he thought he was talking on his, it wasn't him, it was the evil inclination. All we did was help him to weaken the evil inclination, and then what came out is really what is hidden within that person. And if you take that same principle and apply it to what we were talking about with regards to a case where everybody agrees this person is guilty, then we say the following. Every Jew, in whatever state he or she is in, is just like what the Rambam says. The distinction is only how revealed is his goodness. Some would have their good openly revealed, and for some it is concealed. But something has to be shown, since in essence, a Jew is good. Based on that, we can understand that even when someone commits something terribly wrong, there has to be some way to find this person's hidden good. When a whole court of justice can only see the negative, that means they cannot find even the slightest good in this individual and are disqualified from judging him. So it's not only about arguing to find the truth. It is the way they look at this person and they say, so help me God, I can't find even one positive aspect, not one single positive thing in this person. And it could be the case where you can't find it. Well, you know what? If you can't find it, you can't judge that person. You have to see through, and you need to find the positive within even the vicious murderer. You need to find the positive and then say, okay, I've seen the positive, but the negative is way more than the positive, and therefore I would give the ruling in that state. But if you don't see it, and clearly you get one single piece of image, that's the one image, and you say, I can't see anything positive about this guy. This guy is not worthy of anything. You would say, okay, you know what? That means you're disqualified. Okay. I was waiting for that question already. It's not positive. It's not positive. And Hitler is not standing here on court. And Hitler is not standing here on court.
But that seems to me. But okay, so
That's positive.
but that seems like I mean to bounce off of both of these guys, whether you say he was kind to animals or was against smoking, it seems to me that okay, 99.9% of people fall into this summarization. But there are people who are just completely amoral. There just are. There aren't very many of them.
Okay, well then, as we said, every rule has an exception, and even this rule has an exception. People who are amoral, people who are monsters, literally monsters, walking on two, people who are not only, I agree with you. They exist, but they're definitely not the majority of the people who are in the court. So then,
we have to say a good thing, what King Manasseh did to Yeshaya and the many things he did. Do we have to say the good things on Manasseh? Well,
he repented. On the day he died, he repented. Not only that, I don't know if I told you that story, but one of the sages had communicated with the soul of Menashe. And he said, what's wrong with you? Why did you go worshiping idols, knowing that God is the real God? And he said to him, Menashe said to this Tana, It's brought in the Gemara. He says, if you were living in my time, you would kiss my feet to go to an idol. You would run after me to get to another idol. If you were, grabbing my, coat shells. You right? You remember that story in the Talmud it's brought. You say, "Oh, you're talking now. You're talking. If you were there with me, right? That the Gemara says, "Al tadin et chavercha shetagia lemkomo." So King Menashe, right? He communicated with him from the world above.
People did not go to worship the golden calf.
I agree with you. There were people who did not do it, and there were people who did do that. Of course.
But how does it Menashe know that this guy would run?
I guess where Menashe was in the world of truth, he knew what he was talking about. In any event, okay, I was thinking you'll ask some question like that. Yeah, there are monsters. There are people who are not under this rule. There are people who have no positive, and then we could say one of the two. Either we have a clear exception for them, and then we execute them, get rid of them, kill them, or like we said earlier, sometimes it's beyond our capacity. Sometimes we just leave it to Hashem, that He knows how to find ways to get rid of. I don't know who that is. I'm sorry.
That's my generation. I grew up as a child when his horrors were being played out. Like I was a year and a half.
Mm-hmm.
So like I think of someone like that. That's a dangerous person. That's an evil person who is just literally bent on. And like the only reason he got caught was because he couldn't stop himself in Florida. It was really the only reason he ended up in prison. That's a dangerous person. He's not just sort of dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
He murdered between 40 and 70 people that we
know
of.
No, but according to secular law, he would get a lawyer who would defend him, so that then he would not be in this category.
Was he executed eventually?
Well, they executed him.
Secular law, that you get a lawyer, so that guarantees that you have somebody.
Right, somebody speaking on your behalf, presenting. Oh, you had a hard childhood, and he was abused, and
as long as someone's advocating your position,
you could be advocating yourself. There's sometimes that it sticks around right away, and sometimes you need to dig in to see it, right? But finding someone with no positive whatsoever, and there could be such a case, and you say, okay, I disqualify myself to judging this person because I can't see anything positive in this person.
Many people here are citing examples of mass murderers, real monsters like that who physically kill people. Do you remember I sent in materials on a Jew who lived in Russia in the 19th century? He wrote, he converted
the protocols of the elders design. You're talking.
Yeah. He converted into Christianity first. Mm-hmm. Then he wrote so many things against the Jews that, based on his writings, the protocols of Zion were fabricated. So now, and what did you write to me? Hashem irham.
Yeah, I said Hashem has His ways.
I think you should write Hashem irham.
In a case like this, where if a man makes complete damage to the community, it's probably proper to judge that this person should not be among the free people and perhaps not even among the living. But that does not necessarily recognize a man who is completely free from any good. Maybe that evil man had one or two good things, not enough to compensate.
Or maybe he wants to get flowers for his wife.
Yeah, that kind of thing, I mean.
Okay, the reason, it's brought in the weekly portion this week, next week, and it also has to do...
What will be worse? Is he converted out of sincerely believing in that false religion? Or he was doing out of fear?
That's not the point. After converting, he wrote that the Jews killed innocent Christian children, etc., and then the protocols of Zion. And now
I want to tell you something.
Every fucking Arab website cites that.
I want to tell you something. If this guy wouldn't have existed, you'd have another person writing the protocols of the elders of Zion. You don't have to give reasons why the Goyim or the anti-Semites hate us. They would find one reason or another reason is because of this or because of that. It's because of this Jew or because of that person, because of this story or that story. They would find reasons just like they find reasons today. So not quoting protocols of elders of Zion, they find reasons today.
You know what's going on in Israel now? The balloons, incendiary balloons are flying from Gaza.
Oh, right, yeah, I heard of that.
Okay, now, last year, I met a Palestinian guy. He said he studied those protocols in elementary school, they teach them. Now, this guy was smart enough. He ran away from Gaza. He's trying to get to Canada. So but the rest,
So,
99%,
Yeah, it's finished.
They get brainwashed and they send some
Yeah.
to Israel.
Anyway, there are, just summary, Shlomo. So I was saying this week is Mevarchim Elul. You bless the month of Elul, and then everybody in Elul we talk about changing, and it is no kidding. It is a month of we're preparing ourselves to the day of justice, the day of Madin, the day of judgment, the day of Rosh Hashanah. And we need to think how we look positive in the eyes of Hashem, how we find the positive in others, even people who are not worthy of being exonerated or absolved. We still try to find the positive within them, and hopefully Hashem will find the positivity